All right, let's call to order this June 22nd, 2026 meeting of the Knox County Audit Committee. And Haley, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Warren? Commissioner Jackson? Here. Commissioner Jay? Here. Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
And all right, so now we have the Pledge of Allegiance from Mr. Thompson. Commissioner, no. Well, I wasn't sure if he's here or not. The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if everybody's had a copy of the last meeting's minutes, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All right. It's been motioned and seconded, and I'll assume that's approval by acclamation. Just before we get started, Matt Warren knew he wasn't going to be here, and it's been a while since I've run the meetings. And just the only thing that's kind of interesting about the audit committee right now is some of us are running up against our a lot of time on the audit committee, but it's not quite as specific as the commissioners or this and that, where you sort of know you have those 4-year periods. And that may come up a little bit later on, because I know they've already been trying to find some people, and I don't know if that's more through Chris's group or who in terms of finding volunteers for the audit committee, because it's hard to find, because you've got certain experience requirements you've got to meet, and it requires some time away if you're working. Most of y'all are working. I'm retired, so I've told them, look, I've said it all along, I'll help whenever you need it, but I think once they found a replacement, then there won't be any need for me to come. And Matt's getting closer to that. So again, those are harder positions to fill, for what that's worth. All right, item number 2. Let's see. Philip, are you and Nathan running that audit report? Absolutely. And I want to say, I thought that was a pretty interesting audit report with all the detail that went into and everything.
Hit the button there. The little people
Oh, wow.
All right, how's that sound? Perfect. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Nathan Wallace, Internal Audit. So today I'll be presenting the results of our Clerk and Master Data Migration Audit. This performance audit was included in the fiscal year 2026 Internal Audit Plan based on a management request from the Clerk and Master's Office. The purpose of this engagement was to provide independent and reasonable assurance regarding the accuracy, completeness, and integrity of the recent data migration from the Justice Information Management System, or JIMS, into the Tennessee Court Information System known as TENSYS. This audit was conducted in accordance with the Generally Accepted Government Auditing Standards, commonly referred to as the Yellow Book. So, getting into our audit objective, scope, and methodology. This is included on the executive summary of the report on page I. Now, the objective of this audit was to assess the completeness, accuracy, and integrity of the data migrated from JIMS to TENSYS and evaluate any associated risks. The scope of the audit included activities and data generated by the Clerk and Master's Office from January 30th, 2002 through January 30th, 2026. To accomplish our objectives, Internal Audit tested a sample of 272 cases from a population of 261,954 unique migrated cases. Our testing focused on key data elements, including case numbers, case classifications, party information, confidentiality designations, and rule docket entries. A second area of testing was conducted over all adoption cases within GIMS to ensure the adoptions in GIMS made their way over into Tensis. And we'll get into that more in the testing section. So to start with some background, the Clerk and Master's Office is responsible for maintaining records and supporting operations of the Chancery and probate courts. These responsibilities include maintaining court records, processing financial transactions associated with the court proceedings, and supporting judicial operations. The full list of case types the office manages is on page 1. So for more than 20 years, the office relied primarily on 2 internally developed systems, GIMS, which serves as the primary case management system, and FoxPro, which was used primarily for financial transaction information. Due to the limitations associated with these older systems, the Clerk and Master's Office transitioned to Tensis. Tensis is a modern court information system used by the Administrative Office of the Courts for Tennessee and utilized by the majority of courts that operate within Tennessee. The increased capability of Tensis compared to GIMS is included on page 2. To give an example of this increased capability, internal audit could not actually pull reports from GIMS to conduct this engagement. Thankfully, we had that capability in Tensis, but GIMS required us to reach out directly to Knox County IT to retrieve the data. And ironically, we got it from one of the individuals who actually built the GIMS system back in the 90s, who is thankfully still an employee of Knox County. So the migration effort was a Herculean task. The full migration process is on page 3. So more than 261,000 case records were reviewed, transformed, and migrated from GIMS into Tensis through coordination between the Clerk and Master's Office, Knox County IT, and the local government corporation, LGC. So LGC provides the Tensis platform. This coordination was extensive and frequent, consisting of multiple data pools, data cleanup, and weekly meetings between KCIT, the Clerk and Master's Office, and LGC. Because the court records include confidential information, such as adoption records, judicial hospitalization records, and other sealed matters, maintaining accurate confidentiality protections throughout the migration process was a key audit consideration. So, our overall conclusions. Internal audit determined the migration process was successful and that established controls operated effectively to reduce the risk of data loss during the transition from GIMS and FoxPro into Tensis. All sampled cases were successfully identified within Tensis, and internal audit did not identify significant issues indicating missing records or material loss of migrated information. Internal audit also confirmed that confidential case protections transferred appropriately for confidential cases tested. Within this representative sample of 272 cases, 19 had a case type which merited a confidential status. These cases were reviewed, and an internal audit found confidentiality restrictions were appropriately applied within Tensis. However, during testing, internal audit found some minor data inconsistencies, which, when extrapolated to the total population, merited further review by the Clerk and Master's Office, and this will be discussed further in Finding 1. Additionally, the Clerk and Master requested internal audit review adoption cases with additional scrutiny due to the strict regulatory requirements surrounding adoption records, creating a heightened need for stronger controls over access to adoption information. Internal audit tested 7,254 adoption cases in GIMS and found no significant issue regarding the migration of adoption records from GIMS into Tensis. However, we did identify an opportunity for improvement regarding SOPs, which we'll be discussing shortly. Overall, the migration project demonstrated a strong collaboration between the Clerk and Master's Office, KCIT, and LGC. The project team performed multiple test migrations, identified data quality issues, corrected any inconsistencies, and completed the transition without operational downtime to the Clerk and Master's Office. So, Finding one. Internal audit issued one finding related to the data differences identified between gyms and Tensis on page 9 of the report. During testing of the 272 sampled cases, internal audit identified 12 cases where information in Tensis differed slightly from the information contained within gyms. These differences did not appear to materially impact the integrity of the records. However, the cause of the differences required additional investigation. These differences fell into two categories. First, 6 cases contained additional rule docket entries in Tensis that were not present in gyms. So rule docket entries represent the chronological history of court activity. This includes filings, notices, hearings, and other case actions. Because these entries serve as an official history of court activity, understanding why these additional entries appeared is important. Management indicated that some entries may have been automatically generated by Tensis based on historical information or conversion activities. Internal audit did not identify any evidence that historical docket information was removed or overwritten, only that information was added regarding to system activities.
And did that make sense to you during your review that could have happened that way?
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
And we get into that further in management response as well, of
Okay.
kind of, because they looked into it and kind of found how all that happened.
Good.
So the second area where the differences kind of arose, 6 cases contained differences in confidentiality settings between gyms and Tensis. Importantly, we did not identify any cases where confidential information became publicly accessible due to the migration. So that's good.
Yeah.
The differences identified primarily involved expanded confidentiality restrictions and different system classifications. However, these differences, we believe, should still be reviewed to ensure the system is operating as intended. Due to the confidential nature of these cases, we cannot give any specific case examples to these anomalies in a public hearing. Internal audit recommends that the Clerk and Master's Office work with KCIT and LGC to identify and document the source of these differences and determine the cause of these data changes. And they've already had movement on that we'll get into in the management response. So going into our opportunity for improvement, internal audit identified one opportunity for improvement related to formal procedures and training on page 10. During testing, we noted a trend of inconsistencies in GIMS data entry practices over the last 100 years. So, which is natural.
Yeah.
These included inconsistent case classifications, incomplete information, and non-uniform naming conventions. These issues did not materially affect the migration. However, they did highlight the importance of establishing consistent procedures moving forward. At this time, comprehensive written standard operating procedures for Tensis have not been finalized. Internal audit suggests the Clerk and Master's Office develop formal procedures and staff training related to data entry expectations, case classifications, confidentiality designations, and records management. Establishing these controls early in the implementation of Tensis will help prevent these historical inconsistencies from reoccurring in the new system environment. So, getting into our management response, the Clerk and Master's Office concurred with the findings and opportunity for improvement in Appendix A. The Clerk and Master has investigated the issue in finding 1 regarding rule docket entry additions. They found these results were system generated by the migration and did not materially impact the case management data. Overall, internal audit's conclusion is that the migration from GIMS and FoxPro into Tensis was successful. The transition maintained operational continuity, preserved critical court records, and significantly improved the office's ability to manage, search, and report on court information. The system capability gained from moving out of GIMS into Tensis was such an improvement that other courts within Knox County could benefit from considering a similar transition. The Clerk and Master's Office and KCIT were fantastic to work with on this engagement. We commend them both for the time, effort, and attention to detail these organizations showed during the migration process. That concludes our report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, my comment is, reading through this, I mean, what a task that was. I'd hate to see that much coming after it, you know, rolling down the hill at you, or the tidal wave. But and it sounds like we've got it set up to where it's going to move forward and be fine. And y'all have got helped a lot with the clerk and master's office, I guess, and really giving them some assurance that it was working right. So. I'm impressed with what y'all could do with, there was that much detail and everything to help them out. Because this is one of those times we're not trying to find out what's wrong, you know, just is it right? And then the only overall question I had was, I guess, where you did find some of these, I'll call them smaller inconsistencies or whatever, and when they do I believe maybe they haven't done the full written operating procedures as how this is supposed to work. If they could somehow have that documented in there, hey, if you find one of these oddball things, here's how you handle it or something. And they may already have that covered, or they may already know all about it. But that's the last comment I had on it. So I think y'all did a good job on that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have a good team that definitely utilizes the technology available to us to take all this massive data and kind of put it into a way that we can test efficiently.
And I think you said your scope covered back through 2000 and what?
So it'll be January 30th, 2002.
That's 2002. So is there a lot earlier than that that's
So-
going to be brought over or doesn't need to? Or
So that was January 30th, 2002 was the implementation of GIMS. So
Okay,
all of the
okay.
data that was in GIMS at that time, which included all historical data dating back to as long as we've had it.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's how we were able to look at things from over the last 100 years, because it was all in that data from 2002 and onward.
Okay. All right, I don't see any other lights. Did they show up on here, David?
Well, Jim,
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
That's okay. I was just waiting for you to.
Yeah,
to finish.
well, I haven't operated under these gizmos for long.
Did you say, just to repeat, not to ask you to repeat yourself, that you had about 7,000 files that were reviewed? I'm assuming that was not a sample.
So it was 7,000 adoption cases that were within GIMS. So we reviewed the total amount of cases to ensure that all the cases for adoptions that were in GIMS actually made it to Tensis.
But you didn't go file by file for 7,000.
No, that was in the 272 sample that included some adoption cases, but that was a representative sample of the total case population. We were able to pull out 272 to test kind of a more detailed drill down method.
No, this is very fascinating. Thank you. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Does a team from the clerk and master want to say anything, or you got an opinion letter, but no one ever comes to our meetings, so if I see a new face, you sort of get picked on a little bit.
Thank you. My name is Scott Griswold. I'm the Knox County Clerk and Master. And first, I want to say how fortunate and grateful I am to the support of Mayor Jacobs, Knox County IT, Internal Audit, and our partners at the state and at LGC. I think I heard the word, or maybe I invented hearing it because it just brings such warm and fuzzy feelings to me, Herculean effort. Our court has been around since, I believe, 1834, and to move so much information into the 21st century is critically important. And the question that I've been asked is why this system and why now? As we move into a more and more digital age, it is important that we invest in technology and that we ensure that our data is as accurate and as protected as it can be. I think we all witnessed, and some of us experienced more intimately, the horrific tragedy of Hurricane Helene. And some of my colleagues in the court clerk system experienced that more acutely than others. Seeing your file rooms wiped away with flood events, fire. I live in fear of the shower on the fourth floor of the city-county building, which is above my records room in the probate division. So having reliable, consistent, clean information only serves the people of Knox County better. One thing that I've been fortunate to be involved with, and part of the reason that we made this move now, is not only the operational and security and integrity issues, but the judiciary itself is transforming. I'm involved with the Supreme Court on its Technology Oversight Committee, where we are working towards moving into a unified case management, data management, financial management environment. And so with the other two court clerks, Mike Hammond and Charles Susano, we're working with the Administrative Office of the Courts and their teams to, for lack of a better word, kind of be ground zero as to the testing of what this new integrated uniform environment will be. So Tensus has had a very good life, and it has done wonderful things for many courts across the state, but it has its own limitations. The next wave of technology is coming. It's anywhere from 3 to 8 years away to full implementation across the state. But because of the investments that the court clerks, with the support of Mayor Jacobs and the executive branch, have made, we are going to be at the forefront of that new horizon. And so I'm very optimistic that we will continue to march forward on these improvements to ensure that our data is protected and that people are well served. This is a small piece of a much larger transformation in the judiciary, and it's something that I'm very excited to be part of, and something that Knox County should be very proud of, to be at the forefront and to be relied upon. And that's a large part of what Mr. Fullerton's team was helping us to ensure that this information could be successfully migrated, because we're setting it up for the next step. And so this report will be relied upon across the state as we are set, hopefully, as the benchmark, which will allow us a seat at the table in the design and testing of that new system, and hopefully some resources that will flow. But if I have one beg and plead, it would be that we continue on this path, that we continue to make the right kind of investments, because the long-term cost savings and integrity will pay great dividends. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, our next item on the agenda is the Knox County Sheriff's Office Employee Merit System Audit. And Shelby and Harrison are going to, I guess, present that. And I'll admit, I didn't get my copy of this before just now, so I don't know that I can ask you any challenging questions on it, but so go slowly for me.
You're going to say the easy questions for me. I'm glad Nathan set the controls on this podium. I always feel like I hit the wrong button. But good afternoon, everyone, members of the committee. I'm Harrison Lewis, Knox County Internal Audit. Today, I'll be presenting the results of Internal Audit's report of the Knox County Sheriff's Office Employee Merit System. This audit was included in our fiscal year 26 audit plan due to the inherent risks associated with a high-volume hiring environment and the important role of the merit system in supporting the Sheriff's Office workforce, along with a previously noted security issue, which we'll touch on a little later. As many of you know, the merit system serves as an independent framework designed to promote fair, merit-based employment practices while helping insulate personnel decisions from political influence. And given the size of the Sheriff's Office workforce and the importance of maintaining public trust, we felt it was important to evaluate whether hiring and record retention activities were being conducted in accordance with established merit rules and regulations. The objective of the audit was to determine if Knox County Sheriff's Office Merit Board members and relevant personnel responsible for the administration and oversight of the system are adhering to the hiring and records retention requirements of the KCSO Employees Merit System rules and regulations and Knox County Code of Ordinances. Our review covered active employees, applicants, and terminated employees during the period from June 30th, 2024 through July 1st, 2025. And specifically, we focused on two core areas: the hiring process, including applicant screening and documentation, and records retention practices for personnel and medical files. We began our review of the applicable merit rules, policies, and other government requirements. And we met with both the Merit Office and KCSO Human Resources staff to understand how the process works in practice. We then designed our audit procedures around those requirements and reviewed employee and applicant records to determine whether key hiring and personnel processes were being followed. Finally, we tested records from several key points in the hiring cycle, including applicant selection and employee separation, to evaluate overall compliance with merit system requirements. Overall, we found that the Merit Office is generally operating in accordance with the merit rules and regulations. We found hiring files to be organized, thorough, and well-maintained. Personnel records were generally complete and readily accessible. Staff demonstrated a strong understanding of their responsibilities and were able to explain or resolve questions regarding documentation during our testing. And while we identified 2 findings and 2 opportunities for improvement, it's important to note that neither finding reflected misconduct, negligence, or a failure by merit staff to perform their duties. Instead, both findings stemmed largely from situations where current rules and current operational practices are not fully aligned, which we'll get into a little further in the report. To address the findings, we have 2 recommendations centered around updating policy and procedure, and we'll touch on those along with our findings. Before getting into that, a little background on the merit system. The Sheriff's Office has operated under some form of merit-based employment system since 1970. In 2022, Knox County modernized the structure by replacing the former 3-member council with the current 7-member merit board. Today, the merit board is responsible for establishing and enforcing rules governing hiring, promotion, discipline, and personnel administration. The board operates independently of the Sheriff's Office, which helps promote objectivity and protects employment decisions from political influence. Supporting the board is the Merit Office, which consists of 4 employees responsible for administering the day-to-day functions of the merit system and maintaining personnel records. And you can see on page 2, figure 2, a flow chart that kind of breaks out the application process from start to finish, where the information flows, who receives it, and so forth. Our main conclusions: compliance with merit rules and regulations. We found that hiring procedures generally comply with merit rules and regulations. However, limitations in the current process prevent full compliance with certain documentation and record retention requirements. For maintenance and security of personnel records, we found personnel records were generally complete, accurate, and well-maintained, though physical security concerns and unclear communication regarding exempt positions present opportunities for improvement. For documentation and timeliness of hiring decisions, controls are in place to adequately document and support hiring decisions. However, increased digitalization could improve process efficiency and record management. What we tested, we evaluated 2 primary functions. First was the hiring process, and again, you can see how this process flows in figure 2 on page 2, and document retention practices. To accomplish this, we reviewed 3 separate populations. The first was newly hired employees, the second was applicants who were not hired, and the third was terminated employees. For newly hired employees, we selected a statistical sample of 49 employees from a population of 171 merit system hires. And you can see in figure 4 on page 4 which job classifications those new hires fit into. We also reviewed a judgmental sample of unsuccessful applicants and terminated applicants to evaluate consistency and record retention compliance. For the hiring process, overall, the results were very positive. For all 49 employees tested, internal audit confirmed the presence of required applications, citizenship documentation, educational verification, references, licensing documentation where applicable, and required examination results. And you can see a breakdown of the full requirements in figure 5 on page 5. Employees had successfully completed eligibility testing and required medical examinations. Documentation was generally complete, organized, and readily accessible. We identified several isolated exceptions that did not rise to the level of a finding. These included 1 employee hired before reaching the minimum age requirement who was subsequently assigned administrative duties until they were eligible. We also found 2 rehires who did not receive new psychological evaluations due to an office practice that differs from the rule language. Several files were missing criminal history reports because of a misunderstanding following a process change. But in each case, management was able to explain the circumstance and provide supporting documentation. Next, for the timeliness of hiring, for the sample reviewed, the shortest hiring process took 16 days. The longest took 128 days. This one was a bit of an outlier. This individual was moving from out of state, and there were some logistical challenges. But the average processing time was 53 days, which we felt was an acceptable time frame. You can see a breakdown of the variance by applicant in Figure 6 on page 6. Based on our review, we did not identify any significant delays attributable to the merit office. Many factors affecting hiring timeliness were outside of the office's direct control, including applicant availability, medical scheduling, and receipt of supporting documentation. We also reviewed a sample of applicants who were not hired. We found that hiring decisions were consistently documented and aligned with the stage at which the applicant exited the process. Documentation supported the rationale for each hiring decision. And during this review, we also observed that the process remains highly paper-based, which ultimately contributed to one of our opportunities for improvement regarding operational efficiency. Looking at terminated employees and records retention, we reviewed a sample of terminated employee files to evaluate compliance with record retention requirements. We found files were generally complete, organized, and readily accessible. We looked at required personnel records and found that they were maintained and available for review. And you can see a breakdown of the required documents in Figure 7 on page 7. Annual evaluations, employee records, compensation information, and related documentation were generally present where applicable. However, we identified one area where the merit office was unable to comply with the requirements of the merit rules, which we'll discuss in finding 1. Lastly, looking at physical security, we performed a walkthrough of the merit office workspace to evaluate the security of personnel records. We observed that access was generally restricted to authorized personnel. However, we identified several opportunities to strengthen physical security controls, which became our second audit finding. And looking at finding number 1, inability to comply with select merit rules. If you look at page 8, the first finding involved 2 specific merit rules that the office is currently unable to comply with as they're currently written. The first would be Rule 6.1.2. This rule requires psychological and physical examinations to occur within 30 days of a conditional offer. During testing, we found employee files did not contain documentation showing when conditional offers were extended. Because those dates originate with KCSO Human Resources and are not consistently documented within merit office records, the office cannot independently demonstrate compliance with the requirement. Next was Rule 14.1. This rule requires the merit office to retain FMLA documentation. During testing, we found FMLA records are maintained by KCSO HR and are not routinely transmitted to the merit office. As a result, the office cannot comply with the requirement as currently written. Importantly, these issues reflect a disconnect between policy and operational reality rather than a failure by staff to perform their duties. Our recommendation was to update Rule 6.1.2 to better align with current operations and establish measurable expectations. We also recommended establishing a formal process between KCSO HR and the merit office for sharing and retaining FMLA documentation. Next was finding 2. We found that physical security could be strengthened. Looking at page 11, the second finding relates to physical security controls at the merit office. The office maintains highly sensitive personnel and medical records. And during our walkthrough, we observed certain entry points lacked surveillance coverage and monitoring controls. And given the paper-based nature of operations and the sensitivity of the records maintained, stronger physical security measures would reduce the risk of unauthorized access. And we recommended that the Merit Board work with PBA to evaluate enhancements to physical access controls and surveillance coverage. Next on page 12, opportunity for improvement number 1, non-merit positions. During our testing, we identified several positions that were treated as exempt from the merit system, but were not clearly labeled as exempt. Examples include certain part-time positions and specialized roles. We suggested that KCSO provide the Merit Board with a comprehensive and periodically updated list of all exempt positions. And this would improve consistency and reduce ambiguity regarding the merit system coverage. Next, opportunity for improvement 2, enhancing operational efficiency. Looking at page 13, we also identified opportunities to improve efficiency through greater digitalization. Currently, many hiring and records management processes remain heavily paper-based. Applications are submitted electronically, but are often printed and manually routed afterwards. Personnel records are maintained primarily through physical filing systems, and we suggested that the Merit Office evaluate opportunities to expand the use of electronic workflows and existing Munis functionality to improve efficiency, strengthen records management, and reduce the administrative effort on the office. Lastly, for our management response, management concurred with all findings and recommendations contained within the report, and their response can be found in Appendix A. The Merit System team will also be meeting with the board in the next few weeks to discuss our recommendations from this report, and I will be present for that meeting as well. We definitely appreciate the cooperation and assistance provided by the Merit Office and KCSO throughout the engagement. Paula and her team do a really great job down there, and it was a pleasure to work with them. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was 2019 or so, maybe 2020. I held a special subcommittee of the commission as chairman to go through a lot of reforms of the merit system and to update it. And at that time, we identified, many of these things where it's a lot of paper being shuffled between, the sheriff's office and them and back and forth. At the time, I know Knox County HR had offered their assistance to say so many of the issues and problems and potential pitfalls could be solved with, modern, well-used HR software that connects the two. And we found incredible resistance from both the sheriff's office and the merit system to do that. It's an office stuck in time with two really strong personality fiefdoms that don't want to give. And so it's not surprising to read this. At the same time, I think that until either Knox County from an IT perspective or from a legal and liability perspective forces the hand, it's going to be hard to change things because they literally pass, manila envelopes, run them across the street. And so it's good that your findings validate what we went through. At the same time, it's still a concern that, this office is quite antiquated. And if there's issues that go south or there are legal issues that arise, it's going to be hard to be defensible of them when it's, so archaic. So appreciate the good work, though.
Well, thank you.
Other than that. Anybody else? I have trouble seeing these lights. All right, well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Y'all did a good job with that one, other than Larson's view of it. All right, next one we have is, Zach, you're up.
Good afternoon, Audit Committee. Zach Fullerton, Internal Audit Director. We really know how to draw a crowd, don't we? A couple of years, I think, since no one from the media has been here, so I have to step up my game. But thank you, Jim, and thank you so much for being chair today in Matt's absence. Just so everyone knows, I did meet with Matt last week. We covered everything that you're going to hear about today, and he apologized for not being able to be here, just had a work commitment that he couldn't get out of. And I know we talked about rescheduling things, and it just never worked out with everyone's schedules, so my apologies on that. But let's jump into your board packets. If you'll go to page 1, of course, you'll see our closed projects that you just heard about. Just heard the results of the two main work products, Clerk and Master and Merit Board. Just wanted to reiterate our gratitude for Scott and Paula both incredibly easy to work with. And, for the data migration project, I would just say if you spend 5 minutes working in gyms, you will understand quickly why it needs to be replaced. It probably doesn't even take 5 minutes. As Nathan mentioned, we would try to pull reports out of gyms and the system would crash. And we'd have to reboot our computers and reboot the program and go through all that. So really thankful that Scott's pushing us forward in that area. And then for the merit board, even though it is paper-based, as Commissioner Jay just described, it's surprising how meticulous their records are and that they're able to so easily go and find files pretty much immediately upon our request. So we were thankful to see that. For me, the paper-based system is concerning. We sat with them. We went through some options in Excel to sort of maybe move out of some paper-based, things into Excel, and hopefully Paula will continue that. And then really the biggest thing for me, though, is this security concerns, just with the level of sensitive data that office houses. We really need to get that tightened up. So the third project that's listed there, just so you know, is the Knox County Internal Audit Peer Review. It was completed the first week of June. So Danny Nucio from the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and Jessica Potts from the city of Cape Coral, Florida, came to Knoxville to perform my review. You can see the objective there, but peer reviews are really all about making sure that our office's internal quality control system is operating effectively to keep us in compliance with the government auditing standards. There's essentially 3 outcomes you can have: pass with deficiencies, or fail. Thankfully, we did get a straight pass. The peer review team wrote, based on the results of our review, it's our opinion that the Knox County Internal Audits Department internal quality control system was adequately designed and operating effectively to provide reasonable assurance of compliance with government auditing standards for our review scope. So that's good news. I think they should call it an A+ instead of a pass, but that's what we got, is a pass. They did, of course, leave us with some suggestions on things we could change, to be more in compliance with the standards, some tweaks to our policies and procedures language, some changes to our templates just to make sure we don't miss anything. If you think back to our February meeting, you heard Philip discuss our internal self-assessment. He pointed out then that we don't always do a great job of saying whether a sample can be projected to the entire population. That was something that they also pointed out. So we spent the last couple of weeks just sort of working through those changes, and continuous improvement. That's what we're all about, and we want to improve our operations where we can. So
What was the acronym name of this group?
it's ALGA. It's the Association of Local Government Auditors.
Okay, because I didn't recognize it at first.
Sure.
Which group it was, because I know y'all participated in those peer reviews.
few different, yeah.
Of other locations, so.
I can say confidently, I much prefer being the auditor versus the auditee. As my wife told me, haha, you are getting a taste of your own medicine. So she's very lovely. Let me turn to the ongoing projects.
I don't think Andrea got any comments.
No, I just didn't.
That was an inside joke.
The ongoing projects, of course, we've been working on the agreed upon procedures for the elected offices. You'll recall this was requested by the Audit Committee in our February meeting. Essentially, we're performing a series of procedures to review the outgoing elected officials' sort of accountability for their office's operations. Promised I would give you guys all an update during this meeting. Things have been going well. We've been routinely receiving the data pulls from our departmental partners each month. IT sends us over all of the file deletions, all of the IT assets, all of the access changes. Procurement and the law department let us know about new contracts. Finance provides us with personnel and compensation information, et cetera. So we haven't seen anything as of now that would trigger any alarms. I would say the only snag, we met with all of the affected elected officials at the onset of this project, just to sort of describe the nature of the engagement, and then what's basically required through GAGAS is that they sign a formal recognition of the expectations that are placed upon them, right? They'll give us honest and accurate information. We were able to meet with all of the elected officials except for the trustee. We reached out to the trustee via email on March 4th. March 9th, March 13th, March 17th, and March 23rd. But ultimately, we were never provided with the time to meet with them. Either way, the work continues. We essentially get all of this data from our partner departments, so we should be able to perform all the procedures as requested. One note, external audit will have a role in this project during the week, the final week of their terms, the week of the actual transition. Some procedures require us to be on site at the locations the final day of the official's term to count cash. Obviously, there's only 6 of us, so due to the staffing, Ted and Gary, their team will be handling the trustees and the county clerk's office. Obviously, they have more locations throughout the county. We'll focus on the mayor's office and the register of deeds. So we've got those split out between us. All right, so let's go through some just general updates you'll find on page 2 of your packet. If you'll recall, I did have to go to Hanover County, Virginia, participated in a peer review of the internal audit department there. Sort of a quid pro quo, you go and do one, and then Alga sends someone to come and do your peer review. So I'm not sure I would ever go back to Hanover, Virginia, but it was sort of an interesting place. It was where Patrick Henry had practiced law, if you remember the "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" founding father. And the Hanover County Courthouse is still there. It's the 3rd oldest courthouse in America. It's actually a National Historic Landmark, so got a little behind-the-scenes tour of that. But more importantly, peer reviews are really a great way for shops to share ideas, look at how they operate. So I was able to pick up some things that Hanover was doing. They had some really cool post-audit lessons learned templates that we brought back, or that I brought back and that we'll start using. Had some checklists to sort of evaluate the sufficiency and appropriateness of evidence. Thought that was neat. So we incorporated that into our templates. And so sometimes plagiarism is the name of the game. So just able to take some of that and bring it back. Other quick highlights. Records Commission met and approved the disposal of 10 boxes of our records that were held at Records Management. If you remember, I've discussed a few times the change in the county to move Records Management to an internal service fund. But we wanted to go through our files and pull out any final audit reports that have to be saved forever, and then any work papers could be disposed of. So they did approve that. We had some staff go back out in early May or end of May to continue going through those boxes. We'll get the next set of 10 on the next Records Commission agenda. CCFO program, everyone's completed it except for Nathan. His last class is scheduled for the 29th in Chattanooga. He was out of town earlier this month on military training. So all of the staff will have completed that. Harrison actually just recently sat for part 1 of the CIA Certified Internal Auditor exam. It's a 3-part exam. He passed part 2. Passed part 1. He'll be sitting for part 2 soon. So good luck to him. And then Richard actually just sat for part 1 at the start of June, still awaiting results. It said it could take up to 8 weeks. So that's always fun to have to wait for that for so long. But and then Harrison and Phillip actually traveled to ALGA, the Association of Local Government Auditors annual conference this year. It was held in Cleveland, Ohio, May 2nd to May 5th. Really great event. That's really the main conference that we try to send people to travel to each year because it's just local government auditors that attend that. I think Harrison and Phillip had a really great time, learned some great information. Phillip came back, gave us a written rundown of what he learned there. They got to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame while they were there, so a pretty neat event. I personally have joined the awards committee for ALGA. It's one of their committees of the board. Works to identify the best local government audit reports of the year each year. So just thought it would be a good opportunity for me to get more involved with ALGA, learn about the sort of what the leadership team looks like, and just continue to engage our shop in these national organizations. We did complete our FY27 risk assessment during the March-April timeframe. So we met with around 25 senior stakeholders throughout the county, general government, schools, sheriffs. That's always a really busy time for us. Obviously, we meet, talk through some common risk topics, try to identify areas that need our attention or places where we think we could add value. This year, we actually included a short survey that was sent out to some of the participants, and just sort of a funny story. One of the questions we asked was, what service would you be most interested in receiving from internal audit? And so then you could check things like performance audit, control risk evaluation, policy review. We didn't realize that in order to complete the survey, you had to check something. And so one person actually emailed me directly and said, I can't complete the survey without selecting something, but I am not interested in receiving any services from internal audit. So that's nice. Anyway, we took all of that information together. We developed our upcoming FY27 plan. And then even, separate from those conversations, sometimes I would say we even think about what are the big topics sort of swirling around in the local community? What are people talking about? What needs to be brought to light? So all of that feeds into our plan, which is located later in the packet. We'll get into that in a second. The mayor and Commissioner Jay recently in May sponsored a proclamation honoring May as Internal Audit Awareness Month. The Institute of Internal Auditors East Tennessee chapter actually included the proclamation and the commission photo in its newsletter sent out to its membership. So thanks to the mayor. Thanks very much to Commissioner Jay for that recognition. And then lastly here, a huge thank you to our committee members with expiring terms. The chairman had mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting. Jim served on audit committee since 2016. He actually filled a half term starting out. He's now done 2 additional full terms. Matt Warren has served 2 full terms, having joined in 2018. And then, of course, Commissioner Jay has served 2 full terms coinciding with his commission term. So, thank you very much for your public service and willing to be on audit committee. And we actually got a couple of plaques for you guys.
Thank you, sir.
So not to bemoan this too much, but I'd have to say that the audit committee consisting of Jim, Matt, and Commissioner Jay, and at the time, Commissioners Richie Beeler and John Schoonmaker, that was my favorite audit committee because they recommended me to the commission to be the audit director. So no offense to our new members, but very thankful to those committee members specifically. When I step back and look at the past 3 years, we've really come a long way. And, I think about things. We've been fully staffed now for about 1.5 years, which might not sound like an accomplishment.
It is.
I cannot recall that ever happening in the past. We built a much stronger relationship with the comptroller's office, especially with the local division of investigations. We've completed some substantial investigations that have helped the comptroller's office and have led to legal proceedings. We won a Knighton Award for audit quality. We've involved our office more with the local IIA chapter and with ALGA. Additionally, I went back and looked at the number of reports that have been posted to our website, and I know that ultimate bellwether of productivity is not how many reports you put out, but just for comparison's sake, in the decade before I became the director, from FY 2013 to FY 2023, Internal Audit had posted 33 reports to our website. Since then, in less than 3 years, we've posted 29 reports. So comparable 3-year window to a 10-year window. But most importantly, besides all of that, we've continuously positioned ourselves as a partner to the departments for process improvement, not as the county police. So maybe only 10% of people dislike us, maybe. But by the way, all the credit for our success as a team, it all goes to the staff. I do very little. They're the real stars of the show, I promise. And all of our work is possible because the audit committee empowers us to do it. So again, thank you, Commissioner Jay, Matt Warren, Jim Morrison, and of course our current committee members as well. Just thank you guys for allowing us to do this valuable work. Okay, let's turn to page 3, which is the FY27 proposed audit plan. So first, you'll see 6 listed audits and attestations, but a couple of things to keep in mind about this list. We don't necessarily list a proposed objective for each project. The reason for that is really like to engage with the auditee, have a couple of conversations about the review area before we lock in our specific objective statement. The second thing is that this plan is not static, right? This is just sort of a roadmap of our planned activities right now. If new risks pop up or we receive project requests from the audit committee or county leadership, we want to be flexible. We want to be able to address those projects. So as you approve this plan today, if you approve it, just keep in mind that things can change as the year progresses. And then lastly, I mentioned this, but when I'm considering which projects we're going to tackle, I also think a lot about government transparency. I want to be able to tell the story of Knox County government, I think in part to dispel some of the inaccurate things that bleed through to social media and things like that. So, I can't tell you how many people I've heard say they receive their property tax assessment and their tax bill is doubling. Well, no, I think we all know that's not accurate, as the reassessment process has to be revenue neutral for the county, so the tax rate gets lowered. So I'm not naive enough to think that the public is poring over our audit reports, but it's something I think about. And if the public is talking about a specific area or questioning county activities, I think it can be helpful for our office to sort of provide an objective review of the situation. So to the plan, the first audit is a general Knox County government P-card audit. Obviously, due to the high transaction volume associated with P-cards, there's always the risk of potential misuse. And if you'll recall, last year we looked at the school's internal service fund P-card program. So looking at the county's P-card program really gives us a good benchmarking exercise between those two. And we'll be looking at internal controls over the program, the effectiveness of monitoring activities, and then of course substantive testing of transactions. Second project listed there is one with working with community development, looking at grants compliance. Obviously, grants and grant dollars that flow through grants, they live in a very complex regulatory environment. Then, of course, you think back to some problems we've seen in other local municipalities, had a situation where another government had awarded some money to organizations that didn't meet established eligibility requirements. So I think that's a timely project, and we'll be looking specifically at grantee eligibility, reimbursement of expenditures, and sort of the process of selecting recipients. Next, we want to take a look at Knox County Schools travel. In the last, I'm going to say 3 years maybe, there's been a process change, a system change, where some of their travel expenditures for the schools flows through a software called Concur rather than the traditional accounts payable processes. So anytime you have a change of that magnitude, it's always good, usually a good idea to come in after the fact and sort of give it an outside review. So we'll be looking at the appropriateness of the expenditures, whether those expenses were in compliance with established policies, what are the controls over the Concur software. For the sheriff's office, we always like to have at least one for schools, one for sheriffs. We're planning to take a look at the detention facility, specifically the capacity of the facility. Richard and I had met with Chief Rubel during our risk assessment discussions, and he really helped us understand some of the difficulties KCSO is facing with that facility and the ability to house certain classes of inmates. So we wanted to look at the capacity, wanted to look at the population of inmates, how long are they staying there and why? What is the cost of that to taxpayers? So I think that's going to be a really big project, and we're hoping that the next sheriff, of course, will be open and ready to work with us on it. On page 4, you already know about these. We have the comprehensive AUPs for the elected official transitions. Obviously, these are underway, as I discussed. They do take a good deal of time each month to reconcile all of the data pools, but should be able to continue our work on those, get those finalized and reports out either in late October or early November. Next, we will have to perform an AUP for the clerk and master's office. So you just heard from the clerk and master, spoiler alert, he's leaving us. He received a great opportunity that he couldn't pass up. His position is appointed by the chancellor. So what we'll need to do is perform some cutoff procedures pretty much immediately. His last day is June 30th. So we'll be on site that day in the Chancery Court and the Probate Court to do cash counts. We'll be tracing the last 5 deposits, the last 5 receipts issued, the last 5 checks issued for all of the operating bank accounts for that office, among all of the other standard cutoff procedures that we do. So that's sort of right here, right on us right now happening. Couple of CREs on the docket, control risk evaluations. First is looking at the utilization of incentives for programs administered by the health department. This is something they do to encourage participation in their programs. So you might think of, a coupon for diapers is provided to an expecting mother if they participate in an expecting mother's seminar, things like that. So we sort of want to look at the process behind that. How are these incentives procured? How are they distributed? How are they tracked? Get a better understanding of that. Second, we're going to plan to look at Knox County Procurement's vendor approval and review. So how does procurement go about approving vendors to work with the county? What controls are in place to monitor the success of those vendors? And then, of course, take action when a vendor is found to no longer be a good business partner. And then lastly, for other services, those are all the typical things. We'll continue to run the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. We'll again perform our annual risk assessment, try to get an external party in to perform an IT engagement if the right project comes along. We'll continue to do our continuous auditing where we review vehicle usage and travel expenses. So let me pause there because I do want to, I'll answer any questions you have about that, but I do want to take a vote on the plan just to sort of as an official stamp of approval from the audit committee. So I'm planning to communicate this out to the auditees.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Was it seconded? Did I hear that? You want to vote? Aye.
Great, thanks.
That wasn't an overwhelming majority.
So on to page 6 in the packet, that's the continuous auditing summary. So for vehicle usage, again, no instances of misuse raising to the level of fraud, waste, or abuse. Only had one exception, which required a bit more work. We had seen in March where an employee who drove their county vehicle to a family member's home. And we, of course, discovered that looking at the GPS and then taking an address, putting it into KGIS, seeing that they had the same last name. So what we did, we expanded our scope for that vehicle back to the first available date that it was put into service. We saw that this was a one-time incident, but we did follow up with the director, Jenny Holden. She confirmed that he was at an inspection site nearby. He had stopped at his parents' home for lunch, and he actually finished his report and uploaded it to their database from there. So no issues in our eyes, but Jenny said she'd still take the opportunity to sort of remind her employees about the fleet manual.
May I ask a question on
Sure.
this? Because, I mean, there's got to be some level of common sense when we're managing, because I would hate for an employee to get dinged or get written up because they have to drive the county vehicle from here to, say, Farragut, and then on the way back, they stop at their house for lunch. I mean, that seemed, there's one thing about fraud and abuse. There's another thing about how do we have reasonable guardrails that say, hey, it's okay for you to, or at least get your manager to sign off on it, pre or post.
Sure.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree 100%. I don't think this rose to any sort of level. And I think that what you just described is the same standard that the comptroller's office would operate under as well. Because you think about it, it's disadvantageous for the taxpayer to pay for someone to go out to a site, drive back to the county building to maybe get their lunch, then drive back out, versus just stopping at a restaurant during their lunch that's 1 minute off the travel path, right? So,
But I don't even really see the need to even have it in the audit report or even reported to the committee.
sure,
Because it's so, 1 mile or 3 miles over.
right.
My recommendation is come up with something that where, hey, you're just signing off and saying the manager okayed it, it's reasonable. I mean, I think when you bring it here, it just, you have the potential of somebody saying, hey, we need more information on this. And
Sure.
who is this person? And, and going to see his mom 2 miles doesn't seem to me to rise to fraud and abuse.
All right.
So.
No, I agree with you. We'll scale back on some of the minutia of that unless we see something that does raise to the level, and then we bring it to the committee.
So, go ahead.
Well, tying into what Commissioner Jackson said, was it what dinged it as something to even look into? Because if he'd gone on to Cheddar's off of Kingston Pike versus going to the house a mile and a half away, Cheddar's would have been fine, but the house wasn't. Was it the actual location that was?
Yeah.
That said, hey, let's look at this.
It was really honestly, it was the last name that we saw that, hey, this is a residential location owned by someone who is a family member, right? And that's why we sort of expanded the scope, and we said, because I think that it's fair to say if it had happened 50 times over the last, 3 months, maybe that would be an issue that we would need to resolve. But we saw that it was an isolated incident. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what dinged it for us, is just that it was a family member, non-county employee that they had traveled to. It wasn't very much off what I would consider the normal travel path either.
So, and it was on so basically it was the vehicle, not the time that they spent there, but the miles traveled with the vehicle.
Sure, just
So
that
they could have spent a half hour there eating lunch, or they could have spent 2 hours there visiting, but it was the travel that was the issue.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
So are y'all getting some kind of automatic feedback from GPS at the end of every month or whatever people are doing? Because, I can remember part of the time I've been here, some of the vehicles didn't have any tracking ability like that. And so that was a big deal to try to make sure they had that. But again, sometimes there's I've seen abuse of cars and stuff before in prior careers, but it almost looks like it's pushing you towards looking. You're looking for something to find, whereas you weren't really auditing that. So
Sure.
I don't know I don't know where the guidelines would originate from that to make it a little more reasonable. I don't know that it's the internal audit that can make that. I'm not even sure it's Chris's group, but I just don't know how I don't think I never saw anything that sort of took a reasonable look now that we can track all the cars.
Well, Zach, you and I have had this discussion before, just recently. I honestly think it's a good thing right now, just given the last year and a half of headlines and discussion about the use of vehicles, extra vehicles, where people have gone, what they've used them for. We didn't have GPS on half the vehicles when I started, and I think most of them are now. I think for a little while, I think there's some reasonable things people are allowing, of course, and I do think that the scrutiny isn't so microscopic that we're spending a huge amount of time. But I actually think it's kind of a good thing that everybody kind of knows, it's a different time and day, and you can't just sort of use things, use county property in an egregious way. So I know you're not spending too much time on this, but I don't mind a little extra given what we went through for the last year.
Right. No, and I would agree, and I think it's good to have accountability and take account of what it is. But I hope, as you mentioned, that we're not looking at with such a fine filter that we're scrutinizing every little thing. But yes, if there does tend to be a pattern of things, or something's really way off in the standard third deviation of location or mileage or whatever, then maybe. But
Sure.
But still keeping, as you said, some common sense in it, because there's, it's not necessarily waste, and if it's something that's not
I agree with you 100%.
far out of the normal.
Sure. Yeah, I think you try to hold to the reasonably prudent person standard, right? Would the reasonably prudent person think that this was, and I think so. I think this is okay, and especially with it not being as you said, multiple occasions, multiple times. So, but to go back to what Jim was asking about with the GPS, we do get that. We have access to it's a system called Samsara. The vehicles are GPS tracked, and it's a very robust system. We could log in right now and see any county vehicle out on the road, how fast they're driving, what their fuel level is, if they need maintenance. So it's pretty impressive what that will give you. But for employee travel, so to turn the page to employee travel, again, no real instances of fraud, waste, or abuse. These are really just low impact policy issues. I won't belabor them too much. The conference brochure wasn't attached to the reimbursement request, or potentially per diem was paid in full for one day where the conference provided a meal, so it should have been reduced by a few dollars. So pretty low level issues. We always communicate those to finance so that they can communicate to the AP staff and to the departments. So no fraud, waste, or abuse. On page 7, you'll have the hotline summary. We've received 6 new cases since we last met in February. We closed out all 6 of those. I think maybe 5 out of the 6 of those originated in the weeks shortly before the primary election, but ultimately able to get all those closed out. I think for the 6, 2 were referred to the appropriate county department for resolution. 1 was a non-county issue. 1 was investigated and deemed to be no issue. 1 turned into a memo to the comptroller's office, and the other was a memo provided to Knox County Management for determination of further action.
Comptroller's office, you said one of them was turned over to that.
Yes, but
You talk about turning it over to the state.
yes. Oftentimes, though, to clarify, the state may get a similar tip that we get, and if we do an investigation and we find that there are no issues, we still send that memo to the comptroller's office. So just because the comptroller's office received something, it doesn't mean that anything has necessarily happened. It could certainly be we didn't find anything, here you go.
Right, and they can pull rank on us anytime, I guess.
Well, that's very true. Yeah, the state always can.
Rightfully so, I guess, but and sometimes you've given us a flavor, and I don't want to get to that today, but I think it was, I don't know if you were on board yet in internal audit, but we just had a meeting that wanted to let the committee members to know what the flavor of some of these things were. We went into executive session, so we weren't following up on anything, but just for y'all to have an idea of what we were talking about, because I've always, and there would be times I would call you or Andrea or whoever, and like, what was this? And either they weren't sure what else they should do with it and stuff too. So I think y'all probably refined that system a whole lot more. Well, we turned it over here, did this, or do you respond back? So, but this was we had some trouble keeping with the county auditor, as it's officially called, and as to what they didn't. This wasn't reported up through internal audit. I think it was part of risk management handled the hotline summary or the hotline activity, and that was something we changed several years ago to get, I guess, a little more visibility over here for whatever that's worth.
Well, if we turn the page now onto page 8, you'll have the recommendation summary. So, of course, we added the 2 merit board recommendations, also added the data migration recommendation, although we did close that as Scott and IT were able to investigate the issues, determine the discrepancies were system generated and would not materially impact the data. We did have a few open issues that reached the 12-month time mark since we last met. First, let me address the 4 open recommendations we had related to the KCSO fleet management audit. Obviously, there's been a lot of turnover in that area within the last 2 months. So at the request of KCSO, we extended the deadlines for those issues through the end of 2026. For the 3 open recommendations from the PBA audit, if you recall, we looked at the space allocations in the city-county building, the lease agreement between PBA, the county, and the city, looked at necessary renovations to this building. So on page 9, you'll see that we closed 2 of those. The first related to the lease agreement for this building. Ultimately, PBA and Knox County are going to accept the risk that finding highlights, which is in their right to do. PBA reiterated that they're open to meet and review the lease with the parties, but their attorney feels that there's not an overarching concern at this time. I don't necessarily agree with that assessment as the auditor, but and I think Perry, not to speak for him, but I think he agrees with me that the lease needs to be reviewed and updated. I don't think it's wise to operate under a lease that hasn't been updated in over 20 years, especially when the title for this building sort of remains somewhat ambiguous in our opinion. So either way, we've highlighted the risk. It'll be up to management to take action, and it's been deemed that the current best path is to stay with what we have now. For the second recommendation, this related to the parking form being utilized by PBA. We'd recommended some targeted updates to that form. PBA did roll out a new form following the audit, includes a place for the department supervisor to sign, as well as PBA access control. So a couple of additional control checkpoints that we will be able to have documented. Third recommendation, mentioned clerk and master data migration that we closed out. If you turn to page 10, at the top of the open recommendations that's the third outstanding PBA recommendation. When I sent out this packet on Tuesday, we hadn't received the final piece of information we needed for that. We have since received it. I didn't want to print off new copies, so just know that top one is also now closed. This was sort of a two-part finding, right? So PBA didn't really have a dedicated procedure to update the space allocation map for this building. And the current map was out of date. So we had recommended PBA establish a procedure to update it, get the map current, and then we also recommended that Knox County Management provide a way for the departments to notify PBA when office space changes between departments. So Jane Burrett with the PBA sent me the updated space allocation map on Thursday. She also provided me with a write-up of their new procedure, which essentially requires their project development team to update the map annually. And then Finance developed a new form entitled the Office Space Assignment Change Notification Form. So departments are supposed to use that when office space changes hands. That form's currently with IT being converted to a fillable PDF. It'll be posted to the intranet and sent out to the department. So I think that's a really great improvement in helping making sure that the department space is allocated correctly. So we'll get that one moved to the closed recommendations. And that's it for me, but happy to answer any additional questions that anyone has.
Nope.
I have one.
I'm just checking for the red
Or
lights
two,
here.
or
so.
7.
Thanks, Zach.
Well, first of all, I do agree that if we have a 20-year lease and things have changed over and over, I've sat through court cases where you have to deal with, lawyers, challenging you, and why didn't you update this, and why didn't you update that? I mean, it seems pretty common sense to update. But, be that as it may, I did want to ask a question about our procedures on the hotline. So it was in the paper in the last couple of weeks that the city of Knoxville that they've just recently changed their procedures, that the hotline for fraud for them was going directly to the chief operating officer, and I believe, and not to it wouldn't even go to the internal auditor. Who do our hotline for fraud, waste, and abuse go to? And did I read that correct?
Well, I can't really speak about the city, exactly what their setup is, simply because I don't know. I do know the city auditor, Savannah Kirk, so could find out that information. But when a hotline is submitted to Knox County, it only goes to myself. Richard Pugh, the audit manager, receives a notification, and Philip Vincent, the lead auditor, receive a notification, and then we may disseminate that out to the rest of the staff. So it would just be our 6 getting notice of this. And that's an intentional choice. As Jim mentioned, the hotline was transferred to us in 2017. It used to live with risk management under the mayor's office. The concern there, of course, is that a hotline tip is submitted about the mayor or someone in the mayor's office, and rather than fully investigate it, they send it to the wayside. Internal audit, of course, we're supposed to be the ultimate, as ultimately objective and independent as you can be. And so that's why it's sent to us. And it also follows the profession's just general standards, call for the internal auditors to be the ones who run that hotline. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just curious if it was going to outside of the audit department. The way it's handled right now is the precise way it should be handled.
I think so. And I will say, though, that obviously that we receive some, sometimes, for instance, criminal matters. Well, what do you have to do in that situation? We have to turn those over to the Knox County Sheriff's Office. So at times, if it does not relate to fraud, waste, or abuse, and it seems like this is something that needs to be investigated, we'll hand it off to one of our partner departments like KCSO or potentially the Office of Professional Standards. We do have a flow chart, I think that we had talked about previously. It's on our website. It sort of shows how we think about them. If it does relate to fraud, waste, and abuse, we keep it internal completely, do an investigation. Rises to a level of criminality, then we would involve the comptroller's office. If it's more of a policy issue, then we sort of turn our results over to management. But if it's something outside of the fraud, waste, or abuse, we have to go to those partners.
Thanks.
All right, we are now up to, where are we? Gary, I guess we're up to you. You ready, sir?
Let's say I might have to just put him down some for myself, but good afternoon, Gary Mitchell of Pew CPAs. Ted is on vacation this week, so he sent me to present our governance letter. I would say he sends his apologies for not being here, but I'm pretty sure he's on a beach somewhere right now, so he probably does not feel too bad about it. But I'll be brief. As I said, I'm presenting our governance letter for the 2026 audit. Professional standards require that we communicate with you all, with the governing board, just some certain information regarding the planned scope and timing of our audit and the significant risks that we've identified for the upcoming audit year. So I'm going over the little 4-page letter that you all should have received in your email from Ted at the end of last week. If you did not receive a copy of it, let me know, and we'll have somebody disseminate it out to y'all. So just generally, this letter discusses our responsibilities with regards to the audit, and then also the planned scope of our audit, which there's not really any real changes from the planned scope of the audit this year from prior years. There's certain required things that we have to look at every year. Going on to the second page of this letter, it talks about materiality involved in our audit and how that is handled. The most significant part here is the next part, the significant risks, a material misstatement. So there are 2 required risks that we're always required to look at every year, and those are fraudulent revenue recognition and management override of controls. Like I said, those are required by auditing standards. We do look at those every year. And those are not specific to Knox County, but it is something that we always look at. There are also other significant risks that we always end up looking at. Those tend to focus around significant estimates like pensions, OPEB calculations, self-insurance, that kind of stuff. So we always will look at those as well. And then I did want to highlight in the current year, it's not mentioned in here, but there are 2 new accounting standards that are required this year. Those are GASB 103 and 104. Which will result in some changes to the financial statements this year. We don't consider those to be significant risk per se, but we will definitely be assisting Knox County Finance with getting those implemented correctly in the current year. Moving on past the significant risk section, it talks a little bit about independence and how important independence is for external auditors and for internal audit as well. And then also talks about internal control and compliance that is related to our audit. And then finally, at the bottom of the 3rd page, it talks about the timing of our audit. So we did do a preliminary audit fieldwork phase, which began in May and actually just wrapped up last week, where we look at internal controls and other various processes across the county. So we finished up that phase of our fieldwork, and we will begin our final fieldwork phase in the September timeframe, which will then go to about the end of the year. So that is the general timing of our audit. And with that, that's pretty much the end of this letter. So if you all have any questions, I'll be pleased to respond to any of those that you have. But this is kind of just the planning phase of us getting going on the audit this year.
I don't see any other comments, so
All right.
thanks, Gary.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So we're on item 6, which just future audit committee meetings. I think our audit committee charter require, I can't remember if it's 4 meetings a year. And I don't know if y'all know that the audit committee even has its own charter. But I like them. When we first started, we had some things that were required approval, usually in November and December. The school funds and CAFR whatnot, or whatever it's called now. We used to be able to get those in maybe December, but now it's stalled to where those are really all January, February type events to really have enough information or confident information. One thing I did is I'd like to have a meeting in September when it was an election year. So that way, three commissioners are on, now 4, I guess you're considered in that group. But when new people were turning over, we'd bring them in and be able to, but we'd wait till after everybody got through the September 1 of 1 million emails and everything else they were learning about. So just tried to get them a little awareness of our group. And because it would depend on, I don't know if you two are going to turn over. We did pass something a few years back that if you're on the audit committee, we would appreciate it if you could stay on it, because we have things that are ongoing that don't just end with, the 4th year or whatever of your tenure. But I'll suggest a September 21 meeting. And I think that would be, how many meetings have we had this year? 3?
We've had 3 already. The charter requires us to do 4.
Okay. So that would give us our 4th one if we need it. But I'm open for discussion because I'm going to pass this on to Matt anyway.
I think if I can, just really quickly, I should have mentioned this, but we are working to find new volunteers for the audit committee. That notice will go out in early July, and it'll be handled just like any other committee. Drew will send out a notice requesting resumes for volunteers to the committee. Our charter does allow potentially Matt to stay on for 1 additional term if we don't have any volunteers put the resumes in, and that has happened in the past because it's hard, frankly, to find people to serve on audit committee. We may have more interest this time, but that is happening in July. So with all the turnover, we may want to wait and make the decision on the next meeting date, but it's completely up to the committee.
Well, we've got September, October, November. We could put one in, and I don't know if y'all have an opinion, don't have an opinion, and I always have to look at, okay, what's my calendar doing in September? And also back to the audit committee, new members, it's not a paid position. I mean, and it's for, I guess there's 3 and now 4 that are commission members. So it's part of your job to be on committees anyway, and you pick if this is one of them. So we've got the 2 of us here that'll be, and they have some requirements of your background experience and everything. And my first time was I turned it in. They circulated it through the local chapter. I said, tell me what it's about. And a year later, I think they're calling me, and Perry and Chris were getting some hot water about why haven't you got that position filled. So, and even when Matt came on, I mean, a lot of these people work. Their employers may not really like them being on the audit committee. So, just keep that in mind. That doesn't always happen real fast. So. So do we want to have a vote on September 1? Do you care? Y'all are at a lot of these meetings anyway.
We'll try to keep it on the Monday of commission meetings. I think that seems the best for the commissioners.
Yeah, and we used to always try to do that close to when you were going to have a 5 o'clock meeting today. And then some people complained about that was too many meetings in a day. So.
I like it all in one day. I just take a half day off work.
Yeah, there you go. And that's what I did when I was still working, when I was doing this. All right, well, let's, we'll I don't know if I'm going to ask a vote for it, but
I think you have the authority to call the meeting, so it's called.
right.
Tell us when you want to meet.
September 21. And we have infrequent occasions, we call meetings all of a sudden. depending on what's going on, or the state's into something, or the guy's looking at things or whatever, so. All right, and with. It'll be 1 o'clock. Well, yeah, they bounce us around, and we've lost a little respect, so. All right, who snuck this public meeting, public comment on our agenda?
Yeah. It's required to do.
Well, I could act like, I was ignorant to that rule, so. Yeah, but really, nobody ever came to it. Nobody ever even wanted to, so.
I don't see him lining up
Yeah. Don't, as long as commission doesn't decide to send some of them our way, but, all right. Any other items, comments you all want to make? To have a motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.